Breaststroke teaching progression. It's very important when you're teaching breaststroke that you establish the kick and the length of the kick. And what I like to focus on is the back of the knees. As you can see, the back of the knees are being pushed up to the surface. It's a good cue for the athletes to say, just extend to the back of the knees. Kicking with the boards, obviously very good with the young ones, but I like to make sure that they kick with their hands holding the board out in front so that they can get that full length by putting their head down, and that simulates the breaststroke position. I think if you hold the board at the top, they don't tend to sit in the right body position. So as we can see here, we got some youngsters. We also try to talk to them about putting their head down as they kick forward, so getting the timing of the kick and pushing their head down. You want to see that head go under the water so they get a nice long glide. From there, you take the board away and you want to talk about the streamline position, so you can get them out of the water and get them doing streamline, head below their arms, because ideally that's where you want to be in the water. And as we can see here, Chelsea demonstrating putting the head down, kick, glide, and a nice long line. So we're looking for a nice long line. Probably would like her to have her head down a little bit more than that because we want to get under that frontal wave there. But the timing's good. You can see when she kicks, she's driving down into a long line. That's the least resistance there. Back of the knees up. With the young ones, this is probably a little bit challenging to start with, but they tend to get it pretty good. So just persevere with it. And again, keep the principles the same, and that is trying to get them into that long line after every kick. We want them gliding in a nice streamlined position so they feel the least amount of resistance. We see here this young lady's rushing because she's feeling herself sink. So we want to slow her down and get her to hold that glide a little longer. And sometimes they'll lift that head a little early, and that stops that glide. So you just want to try to keep them holding that glide. There we go, that's much better there. Squeezing the kick out, back of the knees up. From there, I like to go hands behind the back and get them to kick and put that head down and keep those hips up. So again, it's about trying to get them to hold the long line with the head down, hands behind the back. And this is always a really good drill for youngsters to just get a feel of how they keep those hips up to the surface. And we can see this young lady here is getting a full glide out, and that's really what you want to see. You want to see them holding that kick, looking towards the bottom of the pool. That's a good one there. Holding that, looking down, and you can see she's getting her head under that little wave in the front of her stroke. Sometimes you get them to kick with their head up like this just to show how much harder it is when they keep their head up, just to demonstrate to the kids that, look, if you swim breaststroke with your head up, your hips are going to sink, and it is going to be a lot more difficult for you to be efficient and hold your length. So this is more just a drill just to show them how difficult it is. From there, we move on to underwater breaststroke. And I always find this is good for feedback for the youngsters, because if they lift their head up, they're going to go straight to the surface. But it also teaches them to move those hands forward. So underwater breaststroke, you can start by just doing the arms. I call this the Moses drill, after Ed Moses. The Moses drill is really just about them being aware of that once they get those hands back to the front, they must anchor and get a hold of the water so they can keep their momentum going forward. So there shouldn't be a pause. And this young lady should be deeper underwater. She's a little bit shallow, so you really want to get them down as far underwater as possible. But she is getting that resistance and feeling it. So the kids will feel the resistance and they'll be able to make the adjustments themselves, but also the coach can correct and say, look, you need to keep your head down a little bit more, or you're bringing your arms, this boy's bringing his arms back too far. So I talked to him a little bit about more of a narrow pull. And then you can introduce the kick. So this is the breaststroke swimming underwater. So it's a pull and a kick. And again, it's about staying in a good position, keeping that head down when the pull starts, so there's the least amount of resistance. Very important that you expose your athletes to as many different timing drills and also drills that force them into a position that is going to give them feedback on how that stroke feels, particularly when you want to get them to feel in breaststroke the resistance as much as possible, because breaststroke's about reducing resistance and being efficient. I would do drills like this mixed in with kick, so you might do a kick set, breaststroke kick set, preferably without a board unless you're really young and you're developing their kick position, and then progressing them into these drills. And you know, if you could do it every session or mixing every other session would be good. They need to do a lot of it, and it gives you an opportunity as a coach to progress. Now Chelsea here is just doing a long glide breaststroke, and we try to teach them to hold that glide a little bit longer. And again, you're looking at her getting in that long line, squeezing the kick out, so we're reinforcing what we started with the kick, reinforcing the timing of putting that head down and the glide. And again, what you see here is this young lady's pausing just a little bit, so we might talk to her about just starting that out sweep a little earlier. This little one here, you can see her starting the out sweep the right time. We're springing those elbows back a little bit too far, so what we talked to her about is just keeping the elbows in front of her shoulders. And again, you would do drills that would put her in a position to do that. This girl's rushing there. We want to just slow her down and get them to glide. As you can see, a lot of different models of breaststroke, but the basic principles are the same. You need to be long, cut resistance down, and get as much out of each stroke as possible. Finish that kickoff and a good drive forward. So with breaststroke, some of the common things you'll see with the youngsters is swimming with their head up, like this young lady here, and pulling their arms back a little too far. So you need to use drills to get them in the right position. With that youngster, I would do the hands behind the back, get her head down, kick glide. So the drills become a bit of tools to fix some of the deficiencies. For breaststroke, I think the building the breaststroke technique is critical with youngsters, and it's all about the kick, starting with the kick and then the body position. The kick needs to be finishing into a full long line, legs stretched out, toes pointed, and then you need to work on making sure that they get their body into a streamlined position after every pull and kick, and they hold that streamline in the least resistive position possible before they start their next pull through. The breathing of the stroke needs to be done, I would like it at the in sweep, where they're in sweeping and looking forward with their breath, and then immediately looking back down and kicking into that streamlined position. The drills to do that, obviously kicking independent, but then bringing the timing of the breathing into the kick. That's the hands behind the back, and then also looking at underwater. And it's some simple things. There's plenty of other drills that you can find, and I think the main thing is identifying the technical problem and implementing a drill that's going to help achieve that perfect breaststroke that we want to teach our youngsters. At the end of each stroke, we'll provide some race footage of various athletes, freestyle, backstroke, breaststroke, and butterfly. It's just an opportunity to have a look at some of the top athletes in competition, as well as others that they're swimming in there, and you can get a look at the technique and the way the stroke looks at that level. And I think it's important that you use that model when you're teaching your athletes and developing their technique, that you're working towards the model of the best.
Great Britain is leading with Elizabeth Simmons, who swam backstroke leg with 1 minute 0093. Second place for Australia, Seabomb 10171.
E rimangiamo terza, 1.3.32, in acqua abbiamo le analiste Silvia Rossi per l'Italia, Violin Hoffman Svezia, Leslie Jones, la primatista del mondo australiana, in corsia 5 l'inglese Kate Hayward, in corsia 6 l'altra italiana Roberta Banana. Vantaggio sempre l'Inghilterra, 31,76 il tempo della frazionista, Australia in seconda posizione, Svezia in terza posizione.
Good enough,